episode 4, we start off with a recap, which was very strange. We had a recap of the first 3 episodes. Now, I'm not sure how to feel about this at all. I mean, we are only 4 episodes in. I'm not sure if they decided to put the recap just because they wanted to end the episode with that certain cliffhanger at the end, or if because they knew that they're going a bit fast paced with the first invasion, they decided to put in a quick recap. But regardless what the reason is, we had a recap that basically went for 3 minutes, and of course we have the opening. So in total, it was about 4 minutes and a half before we actually start the episode. Now, me personally, I'm not a big fan of this decision just because 3 minutes could easily be used as added content or extended scenes, but it is what it is. That being said, let's get onto the actual episode. The opening sequence of this episode is probably one of my favorite part of the episode. We get a shot of the entire Serite from the top view, and we can clearly see the exact amount of how many of these stone rooters are. And they detected that there are 16 stone rooters attacking the Serite, and I really like this because this is basically an extended scene of the ending of chapter 494, which is when Akon announced the amount of death in the amount of minutes. So before we get to that part, basically we get a good amount of added content showing us the amount of Shinigami that has already died in this war, and I really love the detail they put in this. They really went all out with the atmosphere, the despair. They really went really hard with it. Like we can see a lot of Shinigami's body left and right, a lot of gore. We even see a close up shot of Kira, and I really love this scene. You could really feel the intensity behind it. And then we move to Akon, and Akon basically announced the amount of deaths, I believe was 1,000 deaths in 7 minutes. Then we move on to the next scene, which is we see Hashworth walking towards fake Eisen. He completely, literally cut him in half. We get the title of the episode, Kill the Shadow. And once again, I really love how they're utilizing the episode title into the episode. Very creative. We have Stone Reader Yu Na, who is up against, I forgot what his name was. He's the captain of Squad 3. He was one of the previous visors. I apologize. Normally I know everyone's name, but for some reason I forgot his name. Basically, he tells Na that he feels sad about Kira passing on, and that if Kira's actually dead, him and his violin will be very sad. And basically, with a badass close-up shot, he tells Nanana that don't think that you're gonna leave here alive, Quincy. And I like how he said it. Then after that scene, we get Asnot killing a bunch of Shinigamis left and right with what they appear to look like thorns. What I really love about this scene is that it really captures Asnod's character. Like you could really see the terrifying atmosphere around him. Like it's when you look at him, you feel uneasy, and he looks terrifying. You feel a bit scared. And very ironic that this episode fall in the Halloween period, and it just very coincidentally just suits Asnod's character. Basically, the Shinigami are screaming in a horrifying way every time Asnod kills them with their thorns. And then we get Renji finally coming on the scene, and it's Renji against Asnod. And then we get a sequence of all the captains and Stone Ridders matchup. So we can see that we see Toshiro against Chengdu, Bambiette against Konomura, Ukitake against I don't know who the Quincy is because they covered his face. Shunsui against the glasses Quincy. We get a bit of action sequence between a few of these stone rooters. Most of them we get more of the Asnot against Renji and Byakuya. I have to say the way the stone rooters made the introduction was very well done. And on top of that, the OST was brilliant as well. Like they played some classic Bleach remake into this episode. I believe they played like On the Precipice of Defeat. They played another song, I forgot what it was called, and they also played soundtrack of Andor, if that was the music name. And so basically we get a bit of added content in these fight scenes. They've been a little bit extended. I want to focus on the other Shinigami's fight before I get onto the Byakuya confrontation with Asnot. So we see Bambiota chopping some of Komamura's squad members. She's using her ability, and I really like in the anime they added her kicking her own bomb reishi at Konomura. I thought that particular scene was so badass. And basically, she comes down swinging her sword down to Konomura, and Konomura seems to be struggling to use his strength to overpower her. This shows that Bambietta, even though she seems to be like a regular woman, like she's very strong. Then we have another scene with Toshiro and Chengdu, and I really like how they showed Toshiro tries to slash him, but it didn't affect him, and we hear like a metal sound coming off Chengdu's body, so that gives us a hint as what his ability is in the near future. So basically he pushes Toshiro against the wall, Toshiro in the building, and then we move on to Soifon and BG9, and Soifon can't pierce him with her Shika abilities, and BG9 looked like he used some sort of tentacle like type of attack. So what I do like about these Stone Readers is that all of them have unique Quincy abilities. It's not like everyone has just straight up bows and arrows. No, each of these Quincy's have a unique ability. So we don't really know for sure what Asnot is. It obviously has something to do with the thorns. We have Bambietta more to do with Reishi's exploding. We see Chengdu seem to be like his body is made of something very hard, like steel or something like that. And BG9 is, we don't know. He looks like he has some mechanical parts in him. I don't know. I mean, he's shooting tentacle type of stuff. So regardless, I'm loving these Quincy's having very different abilities among themselves. And now let's move back to Byakuya joining in the fight with Renji against Asnot. Now, this is the part when the episode starts to intensify. We see Byakuya manage to cut Asnot hand, but then we see a Quincy that looks like a lucha libre. He comes in, and then basically Byakuya traps him. He falls down all the way. I don't know how deep Byakuya made the hole. So basically, he's out of the picture for now. Now it's two against one, Byakuya and Renji against Asnot. And we see Byakuya going to use Bankai. Now Renji state and let Byakuya know that I don't think you should use Bankai because of what happened to Sasuke. And Byakuya, regardless, knowing that, he took the risk to still use the Bankai because he knows that these type of enemies cannot be defeated without the Bankai. Therefore, the Shinigami has thought of this strategy that I'm going to use the Bankai and then we're going to figure out how to break the seal. So then we see Byakuya going Bankai, and man oh man, like to see Zenbon Sakura after 10 plus years, and a lot of the budget went into Byakuya going Bankai. Like we see Zenbon Sakura being so well animated. You see some CGI incorporating part of the scene. We get certain angle, and then we get a shot of Byakuya coming in close as his Bankai is being revealed. Very, very beautiful scene. I really love it. And then the Shinigami got their Bankai stolen. And as the Bankai was stolen, I really loved that soundtrack that was playing while it was happening. And I can't remember the name of this soundtrack, but it's an old school soundtrack. You know what I'm talking about. The way the soundtrack was playing as that scene was happening with the Captain Bankai being stolen, it was perfect. I really love that scene. It really captures the frightening despair moment that the captain knew that they fucked up. Like they literally screwed up big time. And then we move back to Akon, and Akon basically cannot handle the situation anymore. And now he decided to contact Ichigo for Ichigo to help the Soul Society. Okay. Then we see Akon calling Urahara back in Wakemundo. Urahara answers a call, and basically Akon explained to Urahara what's happening in Soul Society. And Urahara mentioned to Akon, Ichigo cannot speak to you right now because he is fighting against the Quincy. And we see Kurgi trying to steal Ichigo's Bankai, but he cannot steal Ichigo's Bankai. Now, Ivan tried to do the same thing, and that failed. Here, the same thing. Kyuga, a pure Quincy, still cannot steal Ichigo's Bankai, and Ichigo is basically dominating Kyuga at this point. Then we get a scene where Ichigo tells Kyuga, why did Quincy want to steal Bankai so bad? Does that mean you fear the Bankai? And I really love that from Ichigo is that confident and the way he said it to Kyuga, and you could clearly see that Kyuga has some fear in him, but at the same time he was trying to stay strong as well. And Urahara used this opportunity to put him down pretty much. Urahara then tells Ichigo, look, you need to go to Soul Society on the ASAP. As Ichigo is going through the Senkaimon and listening to Akon while he's heading towards Soul Society, Akon is mentioning Ichigo what happened with the four captain losing the Bankai. Ichigo is in shock, cannot believe that this is actually happening. Then we move to Urahara explaining to Ichigo the three main abilities of the Wanderers, the Quincy. The first one being is the Volstandage, the second one being is the Sclaverai, and the third one is the Medallion, which is to use to steal the Shinigami Bankai. So basically he gives a brief explanation on the three. Then we see Urahara about to, it seems that Urahara was about to tell Ichigo, it seems the reason why they can't steal your Bankai is, and then we get cut off right there. And very fascinating because I do not remember that dialogue happening in the manga. So maybe the anime version is actually going to tell us the reason why the medallion won't work on Ichigo. Now we can assume and speculate that it does not work on Ichigo, one, because he's a hybrid, or two, his Bankai is new. There's still room of development. I don't know. It's one of the two. But very interesting that they decided to add that in. And then of course Kyuga gets up with that Quincy ability where they revive. I don't forgot what it was, but it was something Tensei. He shot Urahara in the back with an arrow. The Senkaimon is completely shut down, and Ichigo has no access to get into Soul Society or to get back to Wakamundo. And we see Kyuga shooting an arrow, and then this arrow develops that looks like a jail or some sort of cage that's trapped Ichigo in. And do we also see Chad and Orihime actually has quite of a big hole punches on their body, and I was surprised. I was like, oh damn. So Orihime and Chad are out on the count. We see them on the ground, passed out. Urahara is in a picky situation. Ichigo is in the worst situation of all. And Kyugo basically said that Yuha told him that it's his duty to make sure that Ichigo is not to go to Soul Society and to keep Ichigo at bay. And basically he finished off saying that Ichigo watch the Soul Society as they fall while you're trapped in the darkness. And the episode ends there, and that was the episode. Now, this episode was great. I mean, this episode was fantastic. Yes, the animation wasn't like the best. Obviously, episode one and I think episode two had better animation quality, but this episode quality was still great. But the content that happened in this episode was superb. From the opening sequence to the introduction of the Stone Readers and the captains getting the Bankai stolen, to Akon desperately getting Ichigo on his way to Soul Society, Ichigo being the savior, he's about to save Soul Society, and all of a sudden the situation just gets much, much worse for the Shinigami. And I absolutely love that. We started with a very suspenseful, we're having so many casualties. The Shinigamis are getting killed left to right. Captain Bankai being stolen. And then the episode is basically was telling us, hey, the Shinigami are being in a real hard time. And they basically make us believe that Ichigo is going to save the day. But no, they reverse that. And now Ichigo is in a tough situation, and now the situation went from pretty bad to really, really fucking bad. And I absolutely love that. I absolutely, it's, in some way, it's kind of like a troll what they did there, but it really elevate the seriousness and the despair on this war. I mean, the Shinigami is really, really dying. They are losing this war very bad. At the moment, it's very one-sided. The Stone Readers are coming in, they're getting the job done. And as I was mentioning in my previous episode, the Stone Readers, they don't play around. They come in, they get the job done as quickly, as effective, as easy as possible. They came in, they didn't want to waste time. They came here, all right, we're going to steal the Shinigami's Bankai so we can try and get rid of as many Shinigamis as possible. We are going to keep Ichigo and Wakamundo to avoid further delays. We want to get our job done as soon as possible, and that is what I love about the Vandenreich. Their leader, Yuha Bach, is a very calculated villain. He is very smart. He plans things. He takes certain situation to his advantage and utilize it. And there is no forgiveness with these Quincy's. They just come in to kill. They've been ordered to kill everyone, and so far that is what they're doing. So that's basically the episode itself. Now onto the added content. Now there was more cut content than there was added content. We had a scene of Mari, he's in his lab, and basically he mentioned that the Quincy medallion is not sealing the Bankai. So that already gave us a hint. Another added scene was Renji tying up Asnot with his Samimaru and Byakuya attacking him with Senbon Zakura right directly at his head, and Asnot is unarmed. He took that shit like nothing, and that's another scene I really love. I really love that added scene. It really made Asnot even more frightening and terrifying. Then I think I mentioned this already in the episode where they showed us Bambietta kicking what appears to be like a reishi bomb. Now, this didn't happen in the manga at all, but they added this in the anime. We also get a little bit of Hisagai and Chengdu extension. It's showing early sign of Chengdu ability. We also get Soifun and BG9 fight, which has been a little bit extended, where BG9 actually cut Soifon's face with his tentacle thing, and Soifon rubbing the blood across her cheek. That didn't happen in the manga. We also got one of Bambi's dialogue saying, "Your Bankai is mine, doggy line." That was added, that was not mentioned in the manga. Onto the stuff that was actually cut from the episode. Now, there is a fair few stuff that have been cut. I'm going to go over it with you guys. So the first one that was cut was the scene with Akon saying there's no way we can win was intercut with a panel of Ichigo in the manga. So in a way that was slightly changed in this episode instead, because we never saw Akon saying that while intercut with Ichigo's panel. We didn't get that in the anime version. That's fine. That's something very minor. Also in the manga, we hear the message of the Hell Butterfly gives to Rose, which is pretty much a repeat of what Akon report about the 1000 Dead. So basically, this is one of the content that was okay to cut because it pretty much serves no purpose. It's basically just repeating the same scene but in a different perspective. Then we also have Byakuya explaining how he weakened the ground with Senbon Zakura, which is why the Lucha Libre looking guy fell to the floor. That wasn't mentioned in the anime. We also see Shino screaming over Hidetomo's death while Hashforth and Yuha look on. Now this is very interesting. They did not show Yuha at all in this episode, but one of the cut content they got rid of was Hashford asking Yuha if he should continue because the others have lost their will to fight. And Yuha basically said in the manga that he can leave them alive if he wants. So very interesting. This particular scene, I kind of wish they kept it just because of that close relationship and trust that Yuha have with Hashworth. I kind of wish we had that scene just because we can clearly see that Hashwa is special from the rest of the Stone Readers. Then we move on to another cut content, which after finding out Ichigo is fighting Kiga and Wakamundo, Akon had a dialogue wondering how Ichigo knew about the Quincy being in Wakamundo. And he's basically said that he heard amazing things about Ichigo, but he never thought that he was this unpredictable. Now, again, this is something minor. Why it's cool that we get some extra stuff on Akon in the manga, but this wasn't necessary in the actual plot itself. The other one is Urahara noting to Akon that it looks like Ichigo is winning. This was removed in the anime. In the manga, Urahara mentioned to Akon that they are fighting on equal footing. but then he said, no, wait, Ichigo is actually overpowering Kigo. So again, this is not really that big of a deal. I mean, the anime clearly showed that Ichigo was overpowering him anyway. The next one was Pesce basically telling Urahara off in a goofy way for having a casual conversation on the phone in Wakamundo. Again, like I mentioned in the other episode review, it looks like they're getting rid of majority of the comical relief as it doesn't really serve any purpose, especially of the tone of the arc. Also in the manga, Akon and Ichigo had a lot more dialogue while Ichigo was traveling through the Giganta. Akon telling him that Rukia and Renji are still alive. He also mentioned the stone with a name and the fact that not one Shinigami has defeated a Quincy before getting to the Bankai stealing. This part the anime skip completely. I'm not too fussed about this cut. It doesn't really like change the story. I mean, yeah, you could argue that the line where Akon said that not a single Stern Reader has been defeated. Cool to add, but it is what it is. No big deal. We also have Urahara noting the Vandenreich likely chose to invade Soul Society due to Ichigo going to Wekamundo. Like this wasn't part of Yuha's plan. Yuha didn't expect Ichigo to go to Wekamundo, but because Ichigo went to Wekamundo, he used that golden opportunity to invade the Soul Society rather than wait 5 days. Again, this was one scene that I kind of wish they kept just because it kind of shows that the Vandenreich, in a way, greatly respecting Ichigo as they respect Ichigo being very powerful, but the fact that they respect that about Ichigo really shows the potential and the frightening evolution that Ichigo still has to reach. I really love that part in the manga. Unfortunately, this was cut in the anime. We also have Urahara telling Ichigo that he will soon join the Soul Society as soon as he's ready. These are pretty much all the content that has been cut. Again, most of them no big deal, but there were a couple little ones that I kind of wish they kept. And I believe that 3 minute recap kind of like ruined those certain little scenes that we could have gotten added, but it is what it is. Then we move on to the changes that they made. There's a few changes, not as much as cut content. Some of the changes that's been made in the episode is that in the anime, it was, I think I mentioned this in the episode already, that in the anime, they made it much more clearer how Hashbot killed Hidetomo. In the manga, we don't even see his sword, and it just kind of looked like he flicked it with his hand. And again, in the anime, they really showed that a lot more clearer, and they even showed him cutting Hidetomo in half. Then we get the shot of the rest of the Stone Reader confronting the Soul Reaper is moved to be earlier in the episode, but in the manga, it was more towards the end. Then we have in the manga version the whole if the Seal My Bankai was undercut between Byakuya, Soiba, Konomura, and Hisagaya. But in the anime, it was just Byakuya who delivered it. Now, interesting choice why they did that. I'm not too sure. I don't know if that made it a bit easier for them to anime or they just thought that Byakuya delivering the line or just the focus Byakuya mentioning that it's more intense, I guess. Again, that's not really a big deal. I don't mind that little adjustment of change. Also in the anime, we get Renji noticing Byakuya about to use his Bankai and tell him not to because of what happened in Sasakibe with the whole sealing one's Bankai. Then Byakuya is saying he would do it anyway and he gives the whole if they seal my Bankai speech. In the manga, he says the same speech without Renji saying anything. So very interesting. So in the anime, they made Renji more wary of the situation. I think the anime, I probably prefer the anime version for this just because it gives a bit more layers into Renji's character. And we also have the scene where Akon trying to contact with Ichigo. In the manga version, they first try to contact him through the combat path and note that the badge is in the human world. By Ichigo's energy itself coming from Wekamundo, they find out that the badge is it's in Urahara's store, meaning wherever he is, Ichigo is there with him. So they called Urahara in the anime, they just call Urahara right away. Again, the manga is basically just an extended version of that. It's not a really big deal. And I think finally the last change I've noticed that in the manga version, Ichigo and Urahara finish the conversation on the phone, but in the anime, Kyugo attacks, cuts them off. Now, this is very interesting. I believe that the reason why the anime did this is so the anime wanted to keep some certain information from Urahara for later episode and thus making the episode a lot more suspenseful. Hence the cliffhanger we got for this episode. That is basically it for my review for this week. For episode 4, Kill the Shadow, probably one of the better episodes so far. I mean, we only have 4 episodes, and to be honest, all the episode has been like quite up there. But moving on to my rating, I have to give this episode a 9.4 out of 10. Very, very good episode, and I cannot wait for the next episode because each episode just elevates with the intensity, with the despair. Each episode just raises the bar, and I just cannot wait because I believe the next episode is when shit gets quite messy, and you understand why, what I mean by that. That being said, guys, I hope you enjoyed this review. Tell me what you thought about this episode. Did you enjoy the episode? Now, I know that there was few people complaining a bit with the pacing being too fast. In my opinion, I think with the structure of the first invasion, I think it makes sense that it's faster paced just because of the Quincy dominating the Sarate with a surprise attack. So I believe the structure makes sense for it to be fast paced. But again, each of their own. I get where a few people's coming from. That being said, let me know down in the comment below what you thought about this episode. Did you really like this episode? Do you agree with my score? Do you think it should be scored lower? Is the score higher? Let me know your opinion on this episode, the animation and everything, the structure of the story, how we're going with the pacing. Let me know down in the comment below. That's basically it, guys. I'll see you guys in the next video. It's your boy Joda S. Peace out.